Frigate 0.14 Beta 4 is now out, and even though it's a beta version, I think it's time to go over what's new. A completely redesigned interface, something we've been waiting for a long time that brings it closer to a true NVR. So let's dig into the details. As with any upgrade, there's always a chance for backward incompatibility or breaking changes, and that's no different than in this instance. Several breaking changes, so you need to make sure you take a backup of your current config and your database files. Simply copy your current config file to a new location, and then you need to stop Frigate and make a copy of the Frigate DB file. And those you can find both here in the wherever you installed Frigate. There is your config.yaml file and then your Frigate DB file. And you just copy those to wherever you want to copy those for a backup. All right, in addition to that, there is an entirely new way of reviewing camera footage. So existing events could not be migrated. So if you have stuff on there, the suggestion is to export any starred or favorite events before doing the upgrade. They're simply not going to be in your UI after the upgrade. Now, recordings can still be viewed in the new UI using the recordings viewer. So you can still do that if you have long-term recordings on your devices, but event history and stuff is not there. If you're using the Home Assistant integration, you can still view the events there as well. This is an important one. The zone and mask coordinates are now stored in the config as relative values. So whenever you do an upgrade or do this upgrade, the configuration migrator will read your existing coordinates and convert them to relative use internally on startup. However, if you have mask zone coordinate values that exceed the detect resolution, those will be ignored and you will see warnings in the log. You will need to delete the mask or zone from your config and make sure you use the editor in the UI to recreate it. All these changes, once they're done, makes your config file incompatible with a prior version, which is why you want to back it up. Make sure you have that backup in case you want to go back to a version prior to 14. The live mode config option is now deprecated and should be removed. In fact, whenever I tried to start up my Frigate right after doing the upgrade, it wouldn't start because I had that configuration value in my config file. So make sure that you look at your log files if you have an issue. There are a number of changes made to the database. They're not backwards compatible. That's why a backup of the database is automatically made, but also it's recommended that you do your own backup by copying that frigate.db file. There is a brand new UI, and we will get into all this stuff here in just a moment. In terms of upgrades, this is where I'm running it in Docker. And to upgrade, I simply just go to the image here and I change it. If you're running stable or whatnot, remember this is beta. So if you go change it to a beta, you're susceptible to all the beta issues that happen in that kind of software. So just change this here. You can also I can't say the word. You can also go and do a pull for the image and just do it that way. Either way, it gets you the latest image as long as you specify it properly here. And as of the time of this filming, we are on beta 4. And that's what I'm going to be showing you today. One other thing to note is this version, beta 4, 14 in general, but beta 4 specifically has mapped port 8971 as a new restricted access port. That's a port that allows you to use auth credentials to log into Frigate rather than the standard 5000. So if you're going to be using Docker, and those of you that run Docker probably know how to do this already, but make sure that you've mapped port 8971 in the Frigate container to whatever port you want to use on your system. Now, in previous beta versions, beta 1, 2, and 3, it was on 8080, I believe, and they've moved it to 8971. So if you're upgrading from beta 3 to beta 4, you're going to need to change this as well. So just keep that in mind. I will mention, though, that I had I had no issues, actually, going from 1.3 to 1.4 beta 4. The only issue, again, is that I had that live mode set up in there. So my alerts in Home Assistant still work, including the video previews or the snapshots that I get from the cameras in my alerts, and my alerts themselves all work fine. So nothing really happened when I did the 13 to 14 update. Now, your mileage may vary, so don't assume that it's going to be flawless and no problems. It really depends on the configuration that you're using in your individual setup and whether or not you have any kind of issues during the upgrade. But in my case, I went from 0.13.2, I think it is, to 0.14 beta 4, and I'm still up and running with no issues. All right, let's get into the good stuff. I want to talk about the UI here. So this is an example. Well, this is not an example. This is my actual live UI. And I want to go over a couple things on this page real quick. First being that all my cameras are now in this automatic live view versus non-live view format. What you're looking at here and all of these cameras is a look at the static images. When there is not a detection event going on, these cameras update once a minute, and that saves resources. So it doesn't tax your system as much. Whenever an event occurs, a detection event, not necessarily even alert, but just motion detection, it will actually start playing one of these or start playing the camera, and you'll see a little red dot. And you can see that these cameras here now have shown some sort of detectable event. And whenever it goes back to normal view or non-live view, it goes back to the static images that update once a minute. In addition to that, you'll notice up here that we have these little thumbnails that keep repeating over and over again. These thumbnails show alerts, not detectable activity, but actual alerts based on your alert settings. And they'll stay up here for 2 hours. Clicking on any of these will take you to the alert review page. And if you hover over, it'll tell you what it's detected. So car person there, this is a car, this is a car. So if I click on the car, it takes me to that event here within my review page. And then I can see exactly what's going on here. And then get back there, I just click on back. Now, once you review something, it actually goes away from this and it actually goes away from the review page. And we'll get to the review page here in just a minute. Now, this is the default page that comes with the new version of Frigate out of the box. You can also come over here and click this plus sign, and you can add new camera groups. And I will say front to main cameras just for fun. And I'll call that one driveway or add driveway, and I will add the front porch to that. Now you're forced to select an icon here. So I'll select an icon. I don't care what it looks like. And then I click on save. And now I can come over here and I can click on that. And it shows me just the 2 cameras that I added to that group. And I have some other groups here as well. I got the front cameras, the back cameras, and then I have this one I just added. You can also add bird's eye to these groups. Bird's eye works a little differently now than it did before in terms of viewing it. I'm not able to go directly to the bird's eye URL, I don't believe. At least I haven't figured that out. Before, I used to keep a little bird's eye view on my screen all the time, and it would only pop up when there was action going on. I do have a camera group that's only the bird's eye, and you can see that here with the little bird's eye logo. And then these things will pop up here. So you notice in all the different camera groups, the little, I don't know, ribbon of thumbnails stays up top here until either it times out or you review it and it goes away because you've already reviewed that particular image. If I go over here to review, this is the review button. Then it shows me all of the stuff that occurred. So I have 4 alerts and then I have 13 detections up here. Now you can hover over any of these and it will automatically play, or it should play the video. Let me go back over to this one. And of course, since I'm filming a video, it doesn't work. It worked earlier, but you can also click it. So if I click on here, it's going to play it, unless of course it makes me a liar. Interesting, I had another window open, so maybe it had some resource contention. Okay, so there was maybe a little resource issue with having multiple browsers open. All right, so that played that particular one. And then also, if you go back here, you notice it's green here. That means it's been reviewed. So it will now remove it from the number of detectable detections here, I guess on a refresh. So I have 12 now instead of 13. I still have 5 alerts here on this screen. So this actually turns red whenever it does a detection, and it also turns red whenever it does an alert. This one should actually create, the car just went in the driveway. In fact, it did 45 seconds ago, then we see that here. Now within these camera groups, you also have the ability to resize things. So let me come over to this one. So if I want to resize this particular or edit the layout, I come over here to this little section down here, and I have a choice of editing the layout or editing the camera group. So editing the camera group lets you add or remove cameras from the group. And then editing the layout allows you to resize. So I can actually resize this one, make it bigger. I can also move it around here, move this one around. And you can move these within a grid, wherever you want to within that grid. So I could even make this super small, put it over here, and make this big. So you could actually create a layout in which you had a main camera and then a bunch of little tiny cameras here as well for that layout. And then when you're done, you just click the X and it's now saved your layout. So when you go back over here to these different views, it saves that layout. Now, just keep in mind that the layout is only on your browser that you're running this on. So you could have actually different layouts on different browsers for different devices. So that's handy to have as well. If you ever run into an issue where you have a layout problem, you can actually come over here and you can clear all the layouts. There's a mention in the documentation that sometimes you can't actually resize those. And if it turns out you can't resize it, won't let you drag and drop or move it or anything else, then you need to go in there and you need to clear that. It clears everything, so you have to redo your layouts, but at least it'll give you an opportunity to get back in and fix stuff. I haven't seen that happen yet, but apparently it does enough that the documentation shows that. Also keep in mind that this is a beta, so you're going to actually see weird issues until the final release comes out. You can also click on this image here if you want to go to live view, which is what we're on now, and you can zoom in using your scroll wheel, and then you can pinch and zoom on your device, on your mobile device. So that's an option available to you as well. All right, so those are the basic displays here. You can customize it and format it any way you want to. And of course, we can see stuff going on here as alerts keep coming into this. Now let's go through the settings, because now there's a new settings page for everything. The system metrics are super nice. You have a whole bunch of different metrics that you can get with pretty graphs. So you have all your detector information, your GPU information if you have a GPU. You have a process CPU usage. So this is go to RTC. That's the CPU usage there. Your recording CPU usage, etc. And then you have your memory usage on this panel over here. You can also look at storage, and it gives you an overview of all of your storage and what devices are using the most storage. Obviously, my driveway is using the most because it's recording 24/7. The cameras here give you an overview of each camera and what its CPU usage is and its frame detection as well. So you can get a quick overview on that. And then if we go back over to settings here, now we can also look at system logs. System logs for Frigate itself go to RTC and Nginx, and you can filter these by different types of things. So if I only want to know what errors I'm getting, these are the errors I'm getting for go to RTC, and then for Frigate, and then go to RTC as a filter. When you switch these tabs, the filter gets removed, so you just need to reset it if you want to. And then Nginx, I don't have anything here, I don't believe. Nope. But you can get a good big overview of what's going on in your logs if you're having some kind of issue. You also have a configuration setting. Now there's still YAML that's required. You're not going to have everything in here fine-tuned via the UI, at least not yet. But you do have a lot of stuff you can do in the UI. Some of the cool stuff I'll show you in just a second. But you can turn off that automatic live view that switches between the live view and the static images. Again, you can clear out all layouts. On the recordings viewer, if you want to change the default playback rate every time you go into that, you can do that. I'll set it to 2 to show you here in a little bit. Camera settings. This is something that gets into the alerting. I'll come back to that in a minute. Masks and zones are really awesome because then you can go in here and you can change the camera over here. Let's go to this camera here. And you can go in here and you can edit your masks directly in the UI. Now, when you do this, you still have to restart Frigate, and it actually will tell you. So if I just move this a hair this way, and I come down and save it, it now tells me down here that a restart is required because I changed the masks and zones. So this stuff isn't live. You can adjust it live, but then you have to restart Frigate to make it work. It's the same thing with the motion masks. You can edit those as well. If you have any object masks, which I do on this one, you can also adjust the object mask here. You can always add another zone here. All kinds of stuff you can do with this. All right, so that's the mask and zone. This one's really nice. This one actually puts your camera in debug mode. And this gives you the ability to change the threshold. How much of a change for this one in a pixel's luminance is required to be considered motion. The default is 30. Contour area is used to decide which groups of changed pixels qualify as motion. So that's basically the size of the area. And then you can turn the improved contrast on or off. What's nice about this on cloudy days or partly cloudy days when the sun's coming and going, you can actually watch those debug boxes, and you can adjust it to where those debug boxes or that motion goes away in an area if it's just picking up shadows and other things. So you can really fine tune this. And this is live. Once you do it, you save it. And I don't believe it requires a restart. And then the debug is the standard debug for the different options that you have before. You have your timestamp stuff, your zones, your motion masks, all of that stuff is on here that you can use as well right from this interface. And then there's a users tab. This is part of the new authentication setup, and you can add a new user simply by putting it here. Now, user stuff is stored, and I'm going to read this to get it right. Password hashes are generated using industry standard PBKDF2 SHA-256 with 600,000 iterations. All right, so let me see what else we've got in our settings stuff here. You can set the dark mode, light mode. Apologies for those on screens that just got blasted. And then you can set themes. They have a number of themes. They had a lot more themes in beta 3 than they do in beta 4, but you can choose all the different themes on here. I'll just leave it at default. And then you can get to your documentation and your GitHub page, and then you can also restart Frigate from here. As I mentioned, there's also a GPU CPU thing here. You can see this current CPU usage and the GPU usage. And if you click on it, it takes you, of course, back over to this screen that has all your graphs. And there's a hardware info button. I didn't mention that. It gives you your specific hardware information that might be useful to some of you. So I mentioned I would come back and talk about this camera settings briefly. This is a new section for beta 4. It was in beta 3, lumped into something else, but in beta 4, they broke it out. So if we look at this right here, it talks about alerts and detections. Not every segment of video captured by Frigate may be of the same level of interest. Video of people enter your property are a different priority than those walking by on the sidewalk. So in 0.14, Frigate has now categorized review items as alerts and detections. And I talked a little bit about that, or will talk a little bit about that later on when we go through the review section. By default, all person and car objects are considered alerts. You can refine categorization of your review items by configuring required zones for them. So since they've added this now to the actual UI, you can come in here and on a per camera basis, you can set alerts for the zones, and you can set the detections to delimit detections for specific zones. So there's a lot of documentation about this, and you're going to want to dig into it a little bit. I've just started playing with this to figure it out because I'm getting a lot of cars that drive by on the street that I don't care about. I want them marked as not an alert, but I still want to know they're there. So what that does is if I take away front street, that means alerts are only going to happen for the driveway, which means that's closer to my house. So it changes this wording when you change this. So right now it says all person, car objects detected in driveway, right side, front street, on driveway will be shown as alerts. And on driveway is the camera name. If you take this off here, now it says all person, car objects detected in driveway, right side, on the driveway camera will be shown as alerts. Same thing here. You can limit detections to specific zones. So if I don't want to detect anything on the front street, I will just click that. So all objects not classified as alerts that are detected in the driveway, right side on the camera driveway will be shown as detections. If I check both of these, that means that anything that is not an alert, but is detected on driveway right side or front street zones will be shown as detections. We're basically talking about up here in this section right here, and also over here in the review section, all these alerts are going to show up based on how you set those settings in the camera or for each camera. All right, so let's jump into the review page because that's kind of the fun one here. So under review, Remember the old version where you had basically you just went through on the events page and you had all of them lined up. Now here what they've done is they've broken this down into alerts and into detections, like I mentioned before. Alerts are things that you've got set up that are actual alerts, typically car and person, or things that are going to be defaulted to as alerts. So anything you have in a car or person in your view will show up here as an alert. Detections are things that are outside of that, that still are motion or events, but not necessarily alert type events. So you have the option to do both of those here. And you can see over here on the right-hand side that we have a timeline that's scrubbable. So I can actually click on something like the thing down here, or even hover over these, and I can see these events in this timeline. Now, if you have more things than what fit down in this screen right here, what's going to happen is your timeline will shift down to where it is, or you click down here and it'll bring you down to where it is in the timeline. I can click on Show Reviewed now, and you can see a lot more, and I can go way down here and look at stuff from yesterday while I'm cooking on the grill here. And it'll show all of these things on the timeline. And the timeline is scrubbable or clickable in this case. And you can just move it around to events that you want to see. I'll look over at this one right here, or one of these. It'll put my images into the stuff here. Now, if you hover over something, it'll also move this over here as well. By default, it shows the last 24 hours. You can choose a day. So you can also choose which camera you want to show this on. So I just want to see the driveway camera. That's the only one in this case that has anything, I believe. If I did Show Reviewed with one camera, it would show me all the stuff on this timeline that was just this particular camera. So that's very helpful as well to be able to filter down what's in there. You can also filter based on zones. So you could choose any of these zones right here. You can do all zones or any of these other zones and apply that. And then it'll only show the things that are in that particular zone. So you have camera filtering over here. And then you have also additional filtering where you can filter on the zones and also on labels. So if I only want to look at person and apply that, I would only see things that were person and that were also in that zone. So very good filtering that you can do to get really granular in the type of thing you want to look at in your review. Detections are the same. You can choose the camera. You can also show stuff that's already been reviewed. So going way down here, I can see that, and it brings this whole thumbnail stuff down. And then you can start playing it on here, and your timeline will show up here. This is where you can scrub stuff. Now, remember, I set my default to 2x, 2 times display, and you can kind of scrub through this up to different spots here and see what's next on your timeline. And so that's how you do that with both alerts and with detections. Now, there's a third category called motion. And these are any items in here that actually have motion. And you can still filter by camera, but you can also do this thing over here where you have motion only. And motion only will then only play stuff, and defaults to 8 times, by the way. You only have a choice of 4, 8, 12, and 16. So the slowest you can go is 4x here. But here you can start playing it, and it will scrub through the timeline. Now, if you have multiple cameras on here, it'll show each camera as it goes here. Now, it's a little fuzzy here, so it doesn't look like that's the way it should be working. So let me just pick another spot, and we'll start there. Some of this fuzziness, again, is probably related to just my computer and how busy it is. I'm all recording while I'm showing stuff, and it may have a little bit of a CPU contention here. But it's showing stuff. I'm cooking on the grill there. I've got some motion out here. And then if I go 8x, you'll see I just kind of scrub through this thing quickly. And if you want to pause it, you can also drag the scrubber and you can scrub through different stuff. Now, it goes so fast, sometimes it's kind of hard to miss or kind of hard to see what's going on as it goes through, but you can scrub here. All right, so there we go with that. That is the timeline scrub, which is probably one of the biggest things that you can do here in this for your review purposes. Now, there's also an export feature that's been revamped as well. You can see the export stuff here in your directory, but to export, you go to a camera and you can export it. And there's some stock stuff, last hour, 4/8/12/24. You can also select from the timeline. And if you click on that, I'll just say test export. Click on select. Then you have the ability to drag this and export just the stuff in that particular timeline or that particular time on the thing. So if you see an event on here and you take it down here, and I only want to export that event, then I will click on Save Export, and it will tell me that it started the export, and it will show up in the exports folder. So eventually, that particular export will show up over here. So there's the test export we just did, and it's available in this as well. So that is the new Frigate. Lots of new stuff in there, lots of things that have been done to make it better. Make it more like an NVR. There's a bunch of other things that I didn't cover in here. You can look at the full reference config. Things like the proxy stuff, if you're using proxies, authentication. Here's a bunch of authentication stuff you can set directly within the UI, and a whole bunch of other things that you can do that aren't available from the UI, but still require you to do some changes in here. So just keep that in mind. All of the information is here in the documentation on their GitHub. They talk about a lot of this stuff on the GitHub page as well. They even take you to things like the announcement post that talks about why they made these changes, what the background is, why there's a new approach, and what they're trying to do. So you can read through that if you want as well. All right, so that's going to about do it for this video. It's a quick coverage of what's new in the Frigate 14 Beta 4 version. All right, let me know if you have any questions down below, also on Discord. Thank you for those that subscribe and support me in what I do here, and we will see you on the next one.